Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So I'm just gonna get straight into it. Today we are starting the next installment in my ACOTAR read-along sort of series. So we're gonna be picking up A Court of Mist and Fury today. I do have that in the physical copy here, obviously, but I also have it on my Kindle as well. So if at any point the book just feels like it's too much to hold, I can pick it up and read it on my Kindle instead. So yeah, that is what we're doing today. It is a beautiful sunny day here. There's literally not a single cloud in the sky. So it's about 10:40 a.m. right now. Anyway, that was literally my brain going from one task to another. What was I saying? I think I was just going to say the plan for today is to try to read a good chunk of A Court of Mist and Fury. I'm probably going to try to go for a walk at some point today as well because it's so nice out. Whether that's anytime soon or whether I wait until this evening, maybe when it cools down, I don't know. I think I'm gonna do the same sort of thing that I did more towards the end of the last video, if you guys saw the first ACOTAR read along that I did, where rather than just doing like a specific number of chapters or pages or anything like that, I'm just gonna do check-ins when I feel like I have something to say, but I'll put like the timestamps of kind of what chapters I'm talking about and where I'm at, so that you guys can read along and not get any major spoilers. Anyways, I'm going to get comfortable here and get started. Okay, I already have update number 1. We are 22 pages in. We are still in like the second chapter. And there's already our first smut scene. I forgot how much more intense the smut scenes are in this book, especially compared to the first ACOTAR book. There was like a little bit, but nothing too crazy, nothing too explicit in the first ACOTAR book. But we get right into it in this one. You know, if you don't like smut, you can probably just skip a few pages here. Okay, so I am on chapter 4 right now, and honestly, I have no idea why Feyre actually wants to marry Tamlin, because it sounds like she's just miserable. Like, Tamlin's not really letting her do anything. He's not really hanging out with her. He's not paying her much attention other than in bed. And she hates her wedding dress. She hates the like estate that she's living in. Every room gives her like PTSD. She keeps having nightmares about what she went through in the trials under the mountain, and she's just generally miserable. It seems like the only time that she's enjoying herself is when she's hanging out with Ianthe or Lucian. And it doesn't even sound like she wants to get married. Like, she doesn't want to be a lady of the court either. Like, she was asking Tamlin what she would be referred to, and she was asking if she would be a high lady, and they don't have high ladies. They just have ladies. So, I don't know. It's just weird to me because I'm seeing no reason as to why Feyre would even want to go through with this marriage. All right, next update. We are on chapter 5 now, and like literally the first couple pages of chapter 5 here. And the wedding didn't last very long. Guess who showed up? Rhysand. Rhysand showed up to finally cash in on his bargain that he made with Feyre, so he has stolen her mid-wedding to take her back to the night court with him. And she's over there like,
oh my god, he's taking me away from Tamlin. Tamlin is just letting him take me.
If Rhysand showed up shrouded in mist and kidnapped me from a wedding that I didn't even want to be in, I wouldn't be complaining. I'd be like, take me. Take me. He took her. He said, zip, zip, let's go. Taking you with me. You clearly don't want to be here anyways. So they're going back to the night court now. And this is where things really start to get real. We're not even that far in. How many pages are we at now? 45 pages in. Now we get to hang out with Rhysand. I forgot to mention as well that there's this thing called a tithe, but basically everyone that lives there has to go and pay a tithe to Tamlin, and if they don't pay this tithe, then there's consequences. What those consequences are, I don't know. I don't know if they get killed or what, but basically Feyre realized that Tamlin's a bit of a dickhead to his court when it comes to that. Like, he's not giving any of them leeway at all. And so there was this one water wraith that couldn't pay the tithe because she would normally pay it with fish, but there's no fish in the lake that she lives in, so she has no way of paying her tithe. And so Tamlin basically said, you have 3 days. That's it. Pay it or there will be consequences. And so she like slinked off and she was all upset, and Feyre didn't appreciate that Tamlin was being so strict about it, so she went and followed the wraith and ended up giving her a bunch of like jewels and stuff that Tamlin had actually gifted her. So she gave all these jewels to the wraith to pay off the tithe. And then obviously Tamlin found out about this because there was guards watching everything that Feyre does. So Tamlin was super upset. So Feyre's like, well then, you know, marry someone that can deal with this because I feel like I'm drowning. And Tamlin was like, you don't want to marry me, and lost his shit. I think the guy has a little bit of anger issues, maybe. Okay, I'm on chapter 10 now, and there's been a little bit of info dumping. I think the last time I checked in, Rhysand had just taken Feyre. Basically, she still thinks he's a jerk, and I still think he's amazing. And he is doing two things. He's trying to A, teach her how to read and write, and B, he's trying to teach her how to shield her mind. So like he can go into people's minds and basically shatter them if he wanted to. So he's trying to teach her how to block powers like that out of her mind, because obviously there's other people that maybe have powers like he does where they can invade her mind and everything. Because of the bargain that Rhysand and Feyre made, they have like a bond, so she could open up her mind to him and speak to him through the bond. Sometimes she doesn't do it on purpose. Until this point, she didn't know that that was what was going on, so she didn't have any sort of shields up or anything, so she was unwittingly yelling things down the bond to Rhysand, which is why he knew that she didn't want to get married, and he came and essentially kidnapped her. So yeah, he's basically trying to teach her how to shield herself from powers like that, which like she doesn't seem all that grateful for. And I don't know why she's so upset about it, because at the very least you'd think that she'd want to block him out as well as anybody else that has the power to shatter her mind. So yeah, that's basically her first week in the night court, is her practicing shields and practicing reading and writing. We meet Morgan, which is Rhysand's cousin, distant cousin, whatever, and we see a conversation between Rhys and Mor, and they're talking about an attack on some priestesses and how a bunch of these priestesses had died, and they don't know who did the killing. So that's going to be more prevalent as we read more, I'm sure. And then we also learn a little bit more about Hybern, the King of Hybern, and how he wants to start another war and take over the fairy realms as well as the mortal realm. And yeah, there was just a lot of info dumping on that. I don't even remember the details. I think I mentioned it in my last video, but it's little things you do kind of need to try to remember because they'll be important later on in the book. Sarah J. Maas she puts little like foreshadowing kind of Easter eggs, and you don't know until later on that that's what they were, or until you go and do a reread and you already know what's going to happen. So yeah, that's what happened at the night court for the first week of their sort of bargain, and then Rhys took Feyre back to the spring court, back to Tamlin, and basically shit's been going south for Feyre in the spring court. Like, Tamlin's getting more and more kind of possessive of her, and I think she's just now, like I said, we're at the beginning of chapter 10, and I think she's just now starting to realize that he's like holding her back, which Rhysand also kind of mentioned a little bit. He was like, you seem like you could be super powerful, and why aren't you trying to figure out what sort of powers you have? Like, you were created by 7 High Lords. Like, some of their powers have trickled into your veins now. So yeah, Tamlin's a little bit possessive. He's holding her back. He's not really letting her do anything. He won't let her go off onto like the lands of the spring court by herself. There's guards everywhere. She doesn't even want to paint. Basically, she's just miserable. Yet it's almost like she's trying to convince herself that she wants to be there with Tamlin. But I don't know. I think she's just now starting to realize that maybe things aren't so good in the spring court. I'm back and I look a little bit different because I did end up just walking down to the little store. Anyway, so yeah, I did go for that little walk and I listened to the audiobook. Now I'm back and we have reached chapter 13, and I thought I'd do a check-in because shit went down in the last chapter or so. Basically, Tamlin has gone off his rocker. They found out, Tamlin and like Ianthe found out that Feyre has all these powers and that she, you know, inherited from the 7 High Lords, and they were talking about how if Tamlin and Feyre were to have a child, that child could possibly also have these powers handed down to them, and that puts a huge target on Feyre's back, because if any of the other High Lords were to find out that that's a possibility, then they could kidnap her so that she would be basically forced into siring their own super hyper powerful heirs, if you will. So there's a huge target on Feyre's back potentially, so Tamlin goes into psycho mode, into protecting her, and basically, like, he fully locks her in the manor that she's in, so she can't leave at all. Like, she has a bunch of power, but she doesn't know how to use it yet, so she can't tear down these like imaginary invisible walls that Tamlin has put up to lock her in, and she's trying to like slam the doors, and Lucien basically comes and says like, ain't nothing we can do, you're stuck, Tamlin's trying to protect you. So big thumbs down for Tamlin. If this is your first time reading these books, this is where you discover why everybody starts to hate Tamlin. Yeah, basically he's a controlling, kind of sexist prick. So he did that, and then I guess Feyre, in a panic, probably shouted down her bond to Rhysand. So Rhysand sent Morgan to retrieve Feyre and save her. And Morgan's basically like, Tamlin's walls can't keep us out. Rhysand shattered those walls to bits within mere seconds. Now Mor has taken Feyre back to the night court yet again. Don't know what's gonna happen with that, but she's free. She's not That's the thing. She wasn't kidnapped. She wasn't necessarily saved. She wasn't protected. Morgan specifically said, "You're free." So yeah, I'm just about to start chapter 13 now. I'm about 28% through the book now. So we're making good progress at 2:30 in the afternoon. I'm hoping to get at least to 50% today, and then maybe read the other half of the book tomorrow. I'm gonna get back to reading now. I think I'm gonna pick it up on my Kindle now, because we're getting to the point in the book where it hurts my hand to hold, so. I'm just about to start making dinner, but I thought I'd do a check-in because I'm currently just about at chapter 20 and a lot has happened. So basically Feyre was brought back to the Night Court, and she has started to express how much resentment she has towards Tamlin, basically for trying to lock her in a house, not let her do anything. We've also learned more information about King Hybern and what he plans to do, and about the attacks on the priestesses, which Rhysand said that he had a feeling that that had to do with King Hybern. So it turns out King Hybern's forces somehow managed to get through some wards and attack people. It sounds like he's trying to bring back Jurian, which was the little guy that Amarantha had trapped. So he's trying to bring back Jurian, and that is no bueno because Jurian was a big bad motherfucker. So I'm trying to make this brief because, I mean, if you're following along, you know what's going on, but I just forget how like complex the whole situation is. There's a lot of different layers to it, and it's hard to summarize what exactly happens in this series in general. But Rhysand and Feyre just went to the prison in the Night Court, and they went to see the bone carver, and the bone carver basically told them that, yeah, it's possible to bring Jurian back, as long as King Hybern gets the cauldron, the ancient cauldron, put back together and fixed, and as long as he has the Book of Breathings. So basically they've discovered that that's probably what King Hybern, what his kind of goal is, what he's trying to do, is find all these pieces of the cauldron and the different parts of the Book of Breathings, and he's going to try to bring back Jurian and start a war. So things are not looking great. But they figure since Feyre has different parts of all of the High Lords, that that'll be helpful, because the different pieces of the cauldron and the Book of Breathings, like, they're in different places. They're being held by different High Lords and mortal queens, and I don't, you know, I've read the book before, but I don't know what's going on, you know what I mean? There's just so much to it, but it's good. Like, how many pages am I at now? Almost at chapter 20. So I'm just over 200 pages. I still love this book. Like, there's just so much going on, and I suck at explaining what's going on, but like when I'm reading it and listening to it, I know what's going on. I just suck at explaining things. So I'm on chapter 21. I'm almost at chapter 22. And Feyre has literally just gotten back from, or I guess Feyre and Rhysand have just gotten back from going to see the Weaver. And Feyre literally almost died. Rhysand is a psycho, right? For just sitting there letting Feyre almost die. But the one specific line right when Feyre gets out of the Weaver's like chimney and finds Rhysand in the tree, and he's like, what the hell did you do? I don't know why that made me laugh so much, because it's like, even he was shocked at how Feyre got the Weaver all like bothered. I don't know. And then they go back to, don't mind me, and then they go back to the House of Wind, and everybody's just like, what the hell happened? And Feyre's like, yeah, this guy left me to die and didn't even try helping me. But it was on purpose, because Rhysand's like, this is a good test, because if you can make it out of the Weaver without dying, then you should be able to help us with everything else without, you know, dying. I also, like, this is where I'm starting to really enjoy the characters in this book again. Like, just their, not only the banter between Feyre and Rhysand, but the banter between, like, the group of them. They're all very, like, kind of sarcastic and dry humor, which is just, I don't know, I love it. It's hilarious to me, and the way that they communicate with each other and basically bust each other's balls. It's just funny to me. I love these characters so much. I'm so happy to be back in this world. All right, update time. So I finished part 1 of the graphic audiobook, which ended up bringing us to chapter 33. A little bit has happened. There's been some progress in Feyre and Rhysand's relationship. There was a point at which Feyre and Rhysand were like sending letters back and forth to each other. I'm blushing, like, even now just thinking about it. If you don't like Rhysand at this point in the book, like, you should probably just stop reading the book. So we've hit chapter 33. I think the last point that I updated was when Feyre and Rhys got back from the Weaver. I'm pretty sure that's the last part that I updated on. And since then, basically, Feyre has been, you know, training with Cassian and figuring out how they're going to go about finding the Book of Breathings. And Feyre, Rhysand, Azriel, Cassian, they ended up all going to visit Feyre's sisters, Elaine and Nesta, and basically they went to ask Feyre's sisters to be kind of like emissaries almost, or like a go-between between the mortal queens and themselves in the fairy realms, because the mortal queens have a part of the cauldron that the King of Hybern wants to collect. So obviously they want to get in the way of that. They don't want the King of Hybern to collect that stuff. So they're trying to get in touch with the mortal queens to get information and get the piece of the cauldron and everything. So they're using Elaine and Nesta to do that. And Elaine was being pretty helpful, even though she's engaged to be married to a mortal man that wants to kill all the fairies. And Nesta is like, meh, we shouldn't really be helping these people because they're fairies and we're not, and they're gonna end up killing us, and blah blah blah, you know, typical Nesta behavior. And then other than that, they ended up communicating with Nesta and Elaine and getting that all sorted out, and then they went back to the Night Court, and now they are currently in the Summer Court because they're trying to get the part of the Book of Breathings from his court. So they're basically trying to schmooze Tarquin and see if they can find where he's hidden this his part of the Book of Breathings, and try to use Feyre's powers to steal that from him. So that's where we're at right now. They're currently in the Summer Court and they're schmoozing. So I think I'm gonna finish this book specifically for today because I'm at the 50% mark at chapter 33. So, and I know that it basically starts to pick up from here quite a bit in terms of the relationship between Feyre and Rhys, and the actual like plot line and what's going on. So this is a good spot to kind of pause, and I think I'll pick it back up tomorrow. Alright, so I just started chapter 37. Feyre and Amren are about to die. Where were we when I first started? I guess I was at chapter 33, and we were just we were meeting like Tarquin and people at the summer court, and they ended up figuring out where Tarquin was probably keeping his part of the Book of Breathings. So in their little plan to retrieve it, Rhysand is like up in the sky keeping watch and everything, while Amren and Feyre went down into this like building kind of under the water, or at least most of the time it's under the water. Feyre basically turned into Tarquin with one of her magic powers. I'm assuming that would be Tamlin's power of shapeshifting. So Feyre was able to shapeshift into Tarquin to trick the like wards and spells and everything to keep everybody else out of this place. So she shapeshifted into him and was able to get into this place. But when they actually found the book, Feyre tried to grab it, and the magical spells and powers were like, "You're a liar, you're not him," and now they're about to die. There was a spell that was keeping all the water out of this room, but now the spell has basically broken because it's discovered that someone is trying to steal this part of the book, and now all the water is coming rushing into the room, and Feyre and Amren are probably going to drown. We've also gotten some more banter, I suppose, between Feyre and Rhysand, and we're starting to see Rhysand get a little bit jealous. Feyre was basically having to try to get close to Tarquin to learn where his part of the book was and everything, and Rhysand was being a wee bit jealous. But then on the flip side, Feyre was also getting kind of jealous because Rhysand was trying to like flirt with Cressida to also try to get more information and to kind of make her less like weary and suspicious of them. Feyre was also like, I don't like her getting all the attention from Rhysand. It's okay, everything is fine, because Amren and Feyre were saved by the water wraiths. Now, if you remember earlier, when Feyre was in the spring court and everyone was having to pay the tithe, she basically saved that one water wraith from not being able to pay the tithe, and she said, you know, I owe you a life debt, blah blah blah. Well, guess who has come to save the day? The water wraiths. So they're like, you're welcome, our sister's debt is now paid. So everything is peachy. They have the part of the book now, which is good, and they didn't die. Alright, so I've just hit chapter 41. So we've just met the mortal queens, and long story short, they're a bunch of bitches. But basically, they didn't want to part with their piece of the book. I can't remember exactly how everything was split up. Like, I know that the cauldron was split up into different places, and so was the Book of Breathings, but I don't remember how many pieces or where they all went or anything like that. But basically, the queens don't want to part with their piece of the book. It's been theirs to protect, basically, for 500 years. And also, these mortal queens somehow know how to winnow, so they winnowed into Elaine and Nesta's house in order to have this meeting, and we don't know how they know how to do that. They just said it was a gift from the Fae to them. They know how to do that. They don't want to share their part of the book, and they said, if you want us to share this, you're gonna have to provide us with some sort of proof that you are not the evil High Lord. They're talking to Rhys when they say this, and I said, we need proof that you're not the evil High Lord that we think you are, and that you're actually doing this for the good of the mortals and the good of the Fae and everything. So Feyre's freaking out, thinking the only thing that would really prove it would be to show these mortal queens Valaris. And obviously they don't want to do that because Valaris is private and sacred and nobody knows that it exists. So telling the mortal queens that it exists would be dangerous. No bueno. That's where we're at right now. Rhysand didn't end up just saying, like, I have this place called Valaris, but he said, I'll bring proof. Come back at some point whenever you're available and I'll bring you proof. So I don't know if he's actually going to show them Valaris or some sort of proof from Valaris, or if he has something else in mind. I don't know, but that's where we're at with the queens. So basically, you know, 62% into this book, and basically the only piece of the puzzle that they have retrieved is the one part of the Book of Breathings. So, oh, and Amren is now trying to, because the Book of Breathings is in some really ancient language that only Amren knows about, so Amren is trying to basically decode and translate the book now, which sounds like it's taken a while. So I just reached chapter 43, and basically everyone just went to visit the Court of Nightmares, or the Hewn City. It's the scene in this book that everybody knows. Everybody knows about this scene where Feyre's dressed in basically like a single piece of fabric that's hardly covering any of her lady bits and pieces, and her and Rhysand, they have to put on a good show of being this like evil dictator high lord and his little plaything. So they put on a wonderful show. I think that's the scene where it really, their relationship with each other really starts to like take it to the, like their relationship kind of goes to the next step. It's funny because it makes me cringe and blush at the same time. Cringe only because like I can only imagine witnessing what they were doing. It would make me cringe if I was one of those people, but then also when you're actually reading it and you're seeing them communicating mind to mind to each other, it's not actually cringy, it's hilarious, and it's like, kind of wish I was Feyre, not gonna lie. But I wanted to pop in and say that that's probably one of my favorite scenes in this book. One of many, but one of my favorite scenes in this book, just because you're seeing what Rhysand shows to the world while at the same time seeing inside his heart and his mind and seeing the actual like good person that he is. All right, so I'm currently on chapter 45, and at this point we've actually gone to the Illyrian camp that Rhys, Cassian, and Azriel kind of grew up in. And it's at this point that I really realize and remember that Rhysand is a girl's girl. A girl's guy. He's a girl's guy. I don't want to say he's a feminist necessarily, but he's all for the girls. Like, so they're at the Illyrian war camp, and at this point we know the history of the Illyrian warriors, and we know that in the past, any females that were born with wings, their wings got clipped so that they could no longer use them. But Rhysand has made sure that that is no longer a thing. And in addition to that, he's also made sure that the female Illyrians get trained the same as the male Illyrians. So they're all trained to fight. They all have the use of their wings. So they're at this camp, and the leader of the camp, Devlin, he is clearly against the female warriors doing any sort of training or anything. So he's kind of acting out, being like, yeah, the females are all doing chores first before they can come out to the field and train. And Rhysand's like, no, Cassian already told you that the females train first, then do chores, just like everybody else. And he's like, if you try to make them do anything different than the males do, you're gonna die. We love Rhysand for that. The further we get into these books, the more and more I love Rhysand. Like, I loved him from the beginning, even when we thought that he was an asshole. And I just love him more and more. All right. I'm now on chapter 45. And it is at this point that this is where you really start to hate Tamlin. So just about halfway through chapter 45, and we're finally hearing the story about what happened to Rhysand's mother and sister. And we knew that Tamlin and his brothers and his father killed them, but we didn't know what happened exactly to lead to that. And we knew Rhysand had killed Tamlin's family, but we didn't know why. But basically, Rhysand and Tamlin knew each other growing up, and Rhysand thought that Tamlin was actually maybe gonna be a decent guy, at least compared to his dad and his brothers. And so Rhysand decided to try to kind of befriend Tamlin and taught him some of his Illyrian fighting skills and told him that his mom and his sister were going to come visit him at one of the Illyrian camps. And Tamlin basically just stabbed him in the back and told his dad and his brothers that Rhysand's mom and sister were going to go visit him. And so they set out to go and kill Rhysand's mom and his sister. And Tamlin didn't do anything to stop it. Like, he took that information, turned around, and stabbed Rhysand in the back. Like, the betrayal. There really is no, like, redemption for Tamlin in my mind at this point. You can't come back from that. I'm sorry, you're dead to me. I remember being so hardcore for Tamlin in the first book, and even when doing this reread, I was like, because I couldn't really remember exactly what happened, so I was like, oh, in the first book, Tamlin is such a sweetheart, we love him. No, he didn't do anything to try to protect Feyre under the mountain, and then in this book, he ended up turning into a monster that kept Feyre basically imprisoned and didn't let her do anything. And now we find out that he is a backstabbing murderer. Like, I'm sorry, there's no possible redemption. Alright friends, we are on the third and likely the final day of reading A Court of Mist and Fury. I am currently on chapter 51, which is page 497. I didn't give much of an update where I finished off last night. Chapter 49, when Rhysand and Feyre, they wake up from the tavern and they're heading back to the Illyrian mountains, and Rhysand is flying them there, but they get shot out of the sky by King Hybern's, like, guards, I guess. And not only are they shot out of the sky with arrows, but they're shot out of the sky with poison-tipped ash arrows. So Rhysand is, like, shot out of the sky, but he throws Feyre in a different direction, and then Feyre has to use her woo-woo wind powers to, like, stop herself from smushing into the ground and dying. And then she has to go and try to find Rhysand, so she's following his scent, but she's also following her scent on him, if you know what I mean. So eventually she finds him, she goes full badass and kills all these dudes, and then she has to get these arrows out of his wings, and he is not doing well. So it gets to a point where Feyre's like, I don't know if Rhysand's gonna make it through at this rate. The poison seeped into him too much, and there's nothing I can do, and blah blah blah. So she concocts a plan to trap the cereal yet again, and so she catches the cereal. She's asking the cereal, like, how can I save Rhysand? What kind of poison was used? What will heal him from that poison? And the cereal says, give him your blood. He just needs a couple mouthfuls of your blood and he'll be good. And Feyre says, great, awesome, thank you. Lets the cereal go. And then the cereal is like, oh, also, if you wish to speed up your mate's healing, in addition to your blood, you can give him these flowers that grow by the river and make him chew it. And Feyre's like, awesome, okay, thanks. Wait, what did you say? My mate? And then the Suriel's all like, you dumb bitch, how did you not know that? So, Rhysand is Feyre's mate. Shocker. Then Feyre goes back to the cave, makes Rhysand drink her blood, gives him the flowers, heals him. And she's like, now that you're healed, go fuck yourself. How long have you known? Like, did you know that I was your mate? And he says, yes. How long have you known? A while. And you didn't think to tell her? And then Rhysand was like, I wanted to tell you, but you were in love with this other guy and you were dealing with all this stuff, and I was hoping you might realize when I took you to bed. And then Feyre finds out that not only did Rhysand know, but Asriel and Mor and Cassian and Amren, like all of them knew that Feyre was his mate. The only person that didn't know was Feyre. That's where I ended it last night because I knew that that was a good place to stop, because the next couple chapters get a little bit intense. I know that. I decided to stop reading last night after that bomb was dropped so that I could go into reading today with that information in my brain. So yeah, I'm gonna get reading and I'll check in with you guys probably within the next couple chapters here. We love Rhysand. We've just reached the end of chapter 54, and if you're not crying at this point, then you have no heart, really. I don't really have like thoughts on that. It's more just emotional damage. We love him. I just want to like grab him and squish him and hug him and kiss him, you know what I mean? Alright, just reached chapter 58 now, and the plot thickens. Basically, they went and had another meeting with the mortal queens, and they brought the Veritas orb that they'd collected from the Court of Nightmares, which I don't think I really talked about much, but it was when Feyre was dressed in like a piece of fabric and she was making a big show sitting on Rhysand's lap and everything. Anyway, so they brought that orb to the meeting with the queens, and that orb was able to show them Valaris. So they made this huge risky move in hopes that the queens would be on their side of the war and help them fight and help to protect the mortal lands as well. But turns out the queens are all full of shit. Like they basically wanted to see what Rhys was gonna offer them and tell him to go screw himself, go kick rocks. So they ended up leaving, except basically Rhysand had sent the queens a letter saying, you know, there's this woman that I'm in love with and her family is still in the mortal lands, and I want to help protect, you know, my land and her family. And so when the mortal queens left this meeting, one of the queens left this box with a letter that said, I read your letter, I believe you, I want to help, I hope this helps, whatever's in this box, and don't trust anyone. Don't trust the other queens. There was one queen that was missing in the first meeting. She wasn't sick. Don't trust them. Anyways, so they all left, and the one queen left this box, which had their half of the Book of Breathings. It was one of those double-edged swords, because they're like, yes, we have the other half of this book, but also a really ominous warning. All right, so we have reached chapter 60, and basically after Feyre and Rhysand and Cassian and all of them, like after they had left their meeting with the mortal queens, They went back to the city of Valaris, and Amren got started on trying to translate the second half of the book that they got from the Mortal Queen. Rhysand and Mor went back to return the Veritas Orb to the Court of Nightmares. And Feyre and Cassian ended up going to a symphony, and when they were leaving, all of a sudden there was an attack on the city of Valaris. Basically, all these winged people from the Illyrian Mountains, the Illyrian warriors, the ones that are obviously not on the side of Rhysand and Cassian and Azriel, they all started attacking the city of Valaris because obviously the Mortal Queens had realized what their sister did. They decided to reveal the secret of this city. And so there's this huge attack that happened, and the queen that ended up giving them their half of the Book of the Breathings, she was basically strung up and killed. And the Adder showed up, and Feyre ended up kicking his ass. So at the end of chapter 59, Feyre finally freaking kills the Adder and saves the city, essentially. She kills all the other Illyrian warriors as well, but mostly the Adder. So, you know, that's good. They saved the city for the most part. Obviously, there were some casualties, but for the most part, they saved the city. But now they gotta figure out what exactly happened, why the wards protecting the city failed, and what happened, and who backstabbed them, and what the situation is with the Mortal Queens now. Because now that the one Mortal Queen who was on their side, she's dead. So, it's not looking super good for that alliance. Currently on chapter 63. So, things were good for all of like 5 minutes after Feyre killed the Adder, and then they all came up with a plan to go to King Hybern's estate, manor, castle, whatever you want to call it, and take both of the halves of the Book of Breathings, because Amren finally figured out what they said and figured out a spell that would nullify the powers of the cauldron, but you have to keep the two halves of the Book of Breathing separate. So they went to the King of Hybern. Feyre went in, she found the cauldron, but she was like overwhelmed with the power of the cauldron and the Book of Breathings, and she ended up putting the two halves of the book together, and I don't know what happened. Shit just like overwhelmed her. I don't know what else to say. I don't know how else to describe it, but like the power just overwhelmed her. And then she kind of like came to, and her nose was bleeding. And then guess who shows up? Jurian. Mr. Eyeball stuck in a crystal. So now we're on chapter 63, and I've got like 30-ish pages left of this book. Oh my god. Oh my god, Jurian just shot Azrael with an ash bow. Oh my god. What is happening? Oh my god, I forgot all about this. Lucian and Tamlin were working for King Hybern. Okay. Can't stop now. Must keep reading. Oh my god. It is at this point where you really do realize why everybody hates Tamlin. He made a bargain with the King of Hybern that if the King of Hybern got Feyre and handed her over to Tamlin, then Tamlin would let the King of Hybern's forces enter Prithian through his territory and get rid of the wall between the fairy and the mortal realms. So basically Tamlin is like allowing and encouraging this war to happen just because he wants Feyre back. Men, well, at least Rhysand punched Tamlin in the face. Now the King of Hybern has brought the remaining mortal queens in, and guess who they brought with them? Feyre's sisters. These mortal queens are working with the King of Hybern because he's offering to give them, like, eternal youth, which means that they would be able to reign as queens forever. Like, he's gonna make them immortal. He's basically gonna make them Fae. So basically the king is gonna use Feyre's sisters as, like, an example to the queens that becoming immortal and doing what the king offers is going to be safe. So he's going to use Feyre's sisters as, like, guinea pigs. And guess who sold out Feyre's sisters to the King of Hybern? Like, how does he know about them? Other than through the queens, of course. Ianthe, that stupid bitch. Okay. In their defense, Lucien and Tamlin didn't know that the King of Hybern was going to be using Feyre's sisters like this, so even they're like, dude, this is fucked up. I've been banished back out to the living room because Jesse's going to bed. Elaine has been rolled out of the cauldron, and she's now Fae. And Nest is absolutely beside herself, losing her mind. And even the queens are like, oh, we didn't know that was going to happen. Of course you did. Of course you did. Oh, now it's Nesta's turn. Well, the famous scene where... Big yawn. You can't even see him, my little baby. The famous scene where Nesta gets thrown into the cauldron and nobody can see her anymore other than her hand shooting out and just going, pointing at the King of Hybern. Oh my god. I forgot about this part as well. Like, I knew that at some point it happened, but I didn't realize it happened now. But so Nesta, you know, comes out of the cauldron and immediately runs over to Elaine, and she's like, Elaine, wake up, blah, blah, blah. But then Elaine was staring right at Lucien's eyeball. He only has one. She was staring right at his eyeball and his other fake eyeball. And he goes,
"You're my mate."
oh my god. When I tell you that the last 100 pages of this book are a frickin' roller coaster, but it's like a roller coaster that's only going down. So basically, Feyre pretended to break some sort of power, I guess, that some sort of power that Rhysand had over her. She didn't pretend to break the bond, but she pretended like Rhys had, like, some sort of mind control or something over her. So she broke that, and now she's begging the King of Hybern to break the bond between her and Rhysand. And now Rhysand's like, wait. So now they're all leaving, and Feyre's trying to speak to Rhysand through the bond, but there is no bond anymore. Okay, we got some good news. The king did not break the bond, like the mating bond. He just broke the bargain that they had. Oh my god. I think I was holding my breath. Oh shit, I forgot about this part. They being Rhysand and Feyre, the night before all of this shit went down, Rhysand and Feyre decided to go out and find a priestess and swore Feyre in as Rhysand's high lady. Not consort, not wife. Like a proper high lady. Okay, we're on the last little chapter here, back in Feyre's point of view. But dang, oh. I forgot how good of like a team Feyre and Rhysand are. Like, Rhysand does not doubt Feyre for 1 second. We made it. We reached the end, only mildly tortured. I also love Feyre's anger. Like, I love that she just wants to destroy everything and everyone in her path to getting back to like the people that she loves. Anyways, we've spent quite some time together. I think you guys know my thoughts at this point, and now I'm feeling a little bit brain dead, so I'm gonna go to bed now. But thank you guys for being here. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.